So today I'm going to go over a few different ways that you can analyze your portfolio in Stock Rover, with an emphasis on showing how Stock Rover can make the process more efficient, and you can using several parts of the screen. I've compiled a list of tips for efficiency at the end of each example, which I've included in the webinar outline. So let's get started. First, I'm just going to go over the general outline of steps and items we'll be covering today. I'm going to check the portfolio performance and make sure my stocks are doing well, that they're doing well in their sector and industry, and that they're generally fundamentally healthy. I'm not going to spend too much time on that part, but I'm going to flag any stock that is underperforming in its industry or the portfolio or is unhealthy. And then I'm going to look for replacement stocks. And then I'm going to check the correlation of the portfolio as a whole and of the replacement stocks. And then I'm going to look at how you can set a portfolio alert, so be alerted if any of your stocks in your portfolio are moving more than usual. And then I'm going to show you the portfolio modeling facility where you can test out potential trades. So today will be a largely technical analysis, so it's mainly going to be based on price performance, but I am going to touch on some fundamentals as well. So the first thing we're going to do is just check the overall portfolio health. So if you look at the Stock Rover screen, I've selected my portfolios in the top left under the navigation panel, and that means that all of the portfolios as a whole are listed as individual rows in the table. And there's a couple different interesting things you can see from this view. First of all, we're just in the portfolio performance view here, so you can see some interesting metrics like the value and basis, gain, etc. And also, if you mouse over the name of the portfolio, you can see some quick stats here as well. So you can say the one-day return, the gain one day, the value, basis, gain, and overall and percentage in dollars, price to earnings, and the beta. Also, if you have the portfolio selected as a row, you can go over and see some information in the Summary tab in the Insight panel here on the right. So first, there's just the some more stats here. You can see the year-to-date return and the year-to-date return versus the S&P 500, as well as the beta. And then below that, you can see the portfolio allocation. So you can see the allocation among equity types, but this is just all stocks, as it's my diversified stocks portfolio. And then you can see the sector allocation here. You can mouse over and get, you can see the percentage of the pie, and then if you mouse in, or click in, you can see the individual stocks within that sector. So that stays up in this view, and also just if you're looking at a portfolio in the table. And it's really nice to get a quick visual of how spread out the stocks are across the industries. Below that is the movers panel here, and it shows you the top 5 movers for a certain time period. So I have 1 month selected, but I can just click change time span and select, say, maybe 3 months here. And then I can see the best performers, the worst performers, and the most active stocks over the time period. And I can also see their return over that time period. And also volume or whatever else I want. So I can actually add in any columns. So say I want to see the estimate trends, I can add in the EPS next year estimate trends just by selecting from the drop-down. And now I can also get a quick sneak peek at, or a quick look at those here. So this is really nice if you don't have time to do an overall analysis of each stock. You can just kind of take a look at this panel here and make sure that nothing too crazy is happening with the portfolio, and just get a quick sense of what's doing the best and what's doing the worst. So also in the Insight panel, there's the News tab. So if you click News, and then if you select from the newsfeed menu either Benzinga, Google, or Yahoo News, it'll show you ticker-specific news. So when you have just a single stock loaded in the table or in the Insight panel, it'll show you news for that stock. But when you have a portfolio as a whole selected, you can see the aggregated news across all of the tickers. So this is really nice. You don't have to go through each stock in the portfolio to see the news as a whole. You can just select the portfolio in the table and then see the aggregated news across all of the tickers. Lastly, I'm just going to show you how you can chart the portfolio. So right now we have the table rows are separate portfolios, and then I have the chart at the bottom linked to the table. So that means the left of these two linking icons is selected, and it means whatever rows are selected in the table are automatically charted. So here I can see my diversified stocks portfolio over 1 year, and I can also move back to 2 years or whatever I'd like here. And when I'm charting the portfolio here, I can also add in some benchmarks if I'd like. So I can go to the benchmarks menu and add in the S&P 500. And here I can see that I've outperformed the S&P over the past year, and I can flatline the S&P by clicking this little icon here and see by exactly how much, so about 17.5%. And I can add in, again, I can do that over different time periods if I want. Another thing I like to do is go to the Events menu and check the max drawdown. So this shows the biggest peak to trough decline of the charted lines over the time period. So when I select that, you can see that they both fell at the same time. It was this dip here, and the little down arrow appears. And if you mouse over, you get a tooltip for what the max drawdown was. So for the S&P, it was in mid-October, it was a max drawdown of 7.4%. But then if you look at my portfolio, it dropped 10.2%. So it looks like I might have a little bit of risk in my portfolio. And indeed, if you remember, I can mouse over and see that my beta is a little bit higher than 1, which means that my portfolio tends to move a bit more than the S&P. So that's something I might just want to keep an eye on as I'm tinkering with my portfolio, is how can I make it less risky and less subject to these bigger downturns, or bigger than the market anyway. So now we're just going to quickly look at the S&P by itself. So I'm going to exit out of the portfolio, and I'm going to take away the max drawdown. And I want to just get a sense of what the market looks like, so I can see, because my stocks aren't in a vacuum, they're in the context of the whole market, so I want to be able to know what context they're in before I even start to look at them. So I'm going to go back to 2 years just to see a slightly bigger trend, and there you can see it's definitely upwards, but with some volatility and regression downwards. If I go to technicals, I can select a simple moving average, and I'll just keep the 50 and 150 days. And here you can see that for the past 2 years, the 50-day in red has been above the 150-day in yellow the whole time. So it's definitely a strong upward trend with again, some periods of volatility and move downward. But overall, it looks like the market looks pretty good. So it's a good benchmark of, I also want my portfolio to be doing at least as well. So I'm going to remove the technicals. And now I'm going to go through the stocks themselves. So I'm going to click into my diversified stocks portfolio. And here you can see at the top I have 9 stocks here. And I'm going to group them by sector and work through them by sector. So to do that, just right-click any column header, select Group By, and select Sector. And you can see when I do that, it nicely splits it into 3 sectors: energy, healthcare, and technology. And again, if I actually go back to my summary tab, you can see down in the portfolio allocation, this is how they're allocated as well. So energy, healthcare, and technology. So now I'm going to go through each sector and show you different ways for analyzing the stocks in it to give you some ideas of how you could efficiently analyze the stocks depending on what you wanted to focus on. And as I go through, I'm going to use the color code feature in Stock Rover to kind of keep track of my impressions. I'll also be tagging some of the stocks, but do note that tagging is available to premium subscribers only. And the color coding is just an initial impression. I would obviously want to do more research before making any trades, but they're mainly just to signal how I'm feeling about the stock. So I'm going to use red, meaning that I want to sell the stock and I don't want to replace them. I'm going to use green to signal that it generally looks good and I should do more research, but I'll likely keep it. And yellow means that it looks dicey, so I might want to replace it with a similar but better stock. So first I'm going to look at the energy sector. So I'm going to collapse the other two just so I don't look at them for now. And first I'm just going to look at the energy sector as a whole. So I'm going to remove the S&P and this stock, and I'm going to go over to sectors in the navigation panel. Right click and select chart. And this is energy over 2 years, so you can see it looks pretty bad. And if I just go back to 1 year, I'm going to kind of be sticking in the 1 year time period. It's down 16.5%. So this isn't a great sector to be in right now. So as I'm going through, I have that in mind, and I'm going to be thinking maybe I want to get out of it entirely, or maybe I want to hang on and wait till it turns around. Obviously, that's up to each individual investor. But I want to see first, are any of my stocks bucking the trend? So to do that, I'm just going to hold down Shift and select my 3 energy stocks. And I can see not really, they're all looking not great. One in particular, OII, looks even worse, but none of this is very heartening. So initially, I'm just going to select red for all of them, just signaling that price-wise, they're really not looking very good. So I just did that by right-clicking and going to color and coloring them red. So now I can just look at them one by one, though, to see. So let's go with the first one, Canadian Natural. It's done slightly better than energy, but is still down 10% over the past year. But what I can do when I have just one stock selected is look at these panels in the summary tab that shows just key metrics. And specifically, I'm going to look at the growth section here. So this shows the growth rate over 1, 3, and 5 years, and then the operating income and EPS growth rates over 1, 3, and 5 years. So even though the stock looks like price-wise it's not doing great, if you actually look at the numbers here, you can see that it has accelerating growth in sales, accelerating growth in operating income, and accelerating growth in EPS. So this is an example that even though the price performance on first blush looks pretty bad, it looks like fundamentally it might be solid enough so that when energy does turn, it could really rebound nicely. So for that, I'm going to remove its red color. And I'm actually also going to widen the ticker a bit. For the next stock, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm looking at Hess. Again, its price performance is pretty bad. And then when I look over in its growth tab, I see it also has retracting growth in sales. You can see that it's getting more negative. Same with operating income and same with EPS. So this is an example of a stock that I would probably want to get out of because it doesn't look like it could rebound as nicely as the first one. So I'm going to keep that red. And then I'm going to go to the last one, Oceaneering International. And again, its price performance is even worse than the sector as a whole. But if you look at the growth numbers, they're actually fairly steady over this time period. So I might want to do more research, but I'm just going to take it away from automatically being chopped by undoing the red color there. So one thing I could look into after this is if any of the industries within energy are doing well, or are they all doing poorly. So to do that, I'm just going to clear out this stock. I'm going to go to the energy section in the navigation panel, and by clicking on it, it will load all the industries themselves as rows. And I'm going to hold down Shift and select all of them. And this charts all of the industries over the time period, and I also have energy in here as well. So if I flatline energy, I can see that actually some stocks are doing better as a whole, which of course makes sense because it's an average. But if I want to see how they're doing against the market, I can remove energy, go to benchmarks, go to the S&P 500, and then when I flatline that, I can see that actually there's two industries that look like they're doing pretty well, as good as the market or almost. And those are oil and gas midstream. You can see when I mouse over it kind of bolds the line in the chart. And then oil and gas refining and marketing industry. So what I've done is create a note, and notes are a premium feature as well, but they're over here in the top right, and just reminded myself the best industries in energy. So then if I'm looking for replacement stocks, or if I want to maybe stay in energy but go in a better industry, I don't have to run this process again. I can just go to my note and see what it was. So that's all I'm going to do for energy. Now I'm going to look at healthcare. So before that, I'm going to just clear out the chart and go back to my portfolio. And also, it's lost the grouping, so I'm going to add that back in. And I'm going to collapse energy and expand healthcare. But just like I did for energy, first I'm just going to chart healthcare as a whole. So I'm going to the sectors, right-click, select chart, remove this stock here, and I'm going to go back 2 years. And here I can see that overall it looks pretty good, strong upward trend. If I want to see how that compares to the S&P, I can add that through the benchmarks and see that it's actually, healthcare is doing better than the S&P over, this is 2 years. And if we go to 1 year, you can see they're kind of running right with each other, and healthcare is currently pulled out ahead. But all in all, it looks like healthcare would be a pretty good sector to be in. So that's good to know as I'm going to be analyzing my stocks. So now, instead of charting them all at once, I'm just going to scroll through them one by one, and I'm going to add in their industry as sector as benchmarks. So I'm just going to quickly clear this out, reselect it, go to benchmarks, and select sector, and industry. And then I'm also going to add in a fundamental in the bottom of the chart because as I'm scrolling through one by one, I can get just another set of information if I want. So I'm going to go to fundamentals and select just EPS so I can kind of keep an eye on the EPS numbers. So here, I really like this view because it just shows a lot of information. It shows not only how the stock is doing in its sector, but also how it's doing in its industry and how the industry is doing in the sector. So you can kind of get a sense, is this a good stock in a bad industry or a bad stock in a good industry? It tells you a bit more than just looking at the sector. And then of course the EPS below just gives another layer of information. So the first one, ABAX, looks like it's doing really well. This is kind of what you want to see. Even though the industry itself is underperforming the sector by a little bit, the stock is outperforming both of them by a lot. And then if you look below, the EPS is just staircasing right up. So that's what we want to see, earnings going up without any hits downwards. So I'm going to color this stock green because just from first glance it looks pretty strong. The next stock is Anthem. And this stock also looks pretty good. You can see that it's outperforming its industry, healthcare plans, which is itself also outperforming healthcare. So this is another good sign. It does look like the EPS has kind of come down. So if I want to get a better look at that, I can go back to 2 years and kind of see, it looks like this might be just a cyclic cycle. Again, if I go back to 5 years, this looks pretty average. It kind of tends to be going downwards, so we just happen to catch it in this chart when it's stepping down. So that's where using the time periods to get a bigger pattern is really helpful. But this also looks like, just on first blush, looks pretty good, so I'm going to color it green. And then the last stock I have is PKI, which is Perkin-Elmer. And here you can see it doesn't look as good. The stock is actually underperforming its industry, which is also underperforming its sector. So kind of like worst case scenario here as well. The EPS has kind of been stepping back. If we go back a year, we can see it's actually, it's in a cycle right now, but even so the price performance doesn't look as good. So for this, I'm going to color it yellow, which means that I like healthcare, but I just want to replace this stock. And I'm also going to tag it so I remember later what was it about this stock. So I'm going to right click again, go to tag, and I'm going to say different industry. So I know that that's the reason that that I want to change it. Different industry, and also the stock. Obviously we would choose a stock that's doing well in its industry. So that's all I'm going to do for healthcare right now. So I'm going to collapse that, open technology, and just clean up the chart a little bit. And now we're looking at technology, so I'm going to chart that as well, just so we know what we're dealing with. Right click it in the navigation panel and select chart, and we can go back to 2 years. And here you can see it also has a strong upward trend, though perhaps a little bit more volatile than the S&P. I can add in the technicals here as well as I did with the S&P earlier. So I'll just add in the simple moving average. And here you can see that even though the 50-day is above the 150-day for the whole time period, it definitely was a stronger upward trend here, and then it's kind of threatened to cross over. But overall, it's definitely narrowing. So this isn't as strong an upward trend as it was earlier, but it's still upward. So I'm just going to keep that in mind as I look at the actual technology stocks. So for this, instead of charting against the portfolio or against the sector and industry, I'm going to chart it against the portfolios while also kind of glancing at some other fundamentals. So I'm going to select the first stock. I'm going to get rid of technology. I'm going to go back to 1 year. And then I'm going to go to benchmarks. And instead of adding in the S&P 500 or the sector and industry, I'm going to go to portfolios. And all the way at the bottom is my diversified stocks portfolio. And here I can see that this has overall been good for my portfolio. It's outperformed, so it's kind of pulling it up. And I can also flatline it if I want, just to get a clearer look. But overall, it's this stock is doing well, so I'm just going to color it green for now. So I don't want to worry about it right now. The next one is DTSI. You can see it was underperforming and then has outperformed. It looks a little bit or a lot more volatile than my portfolio, so that's something I might want to keep in mind. But overall, it is outperforming. But if I want something that's a little steadier, I can maybe look for a replacement to see if I could find something that's not going to add such volatility. So for that, I'm going to right click, go to color, select yellow, and I'm also going to add that tag as a note to myself as to why is this tagged yellow, and just say it's volatile. And then the last one is FORM. This is kind of a similar story. It's keeping up with the portfolio, but it's kind of all over the place, and so it's also pretty volatile. So for that, I'm going to right-click it, color, select yellow, and I'm also going to just say that it's volatile. So now I can just have that note. So now we've just quickly gone through the 9 stocks in my portfolio, so I'm going to expand them out and just take a look at what I have. And so energy wasn't great. There's one stock I definitely want to ditch, and these 2 I might wait on it and do more research. Overall healthcare looks good. I might look for a replacement here, and then in technology I can look for 2 replacements that are kind of going to give less volatility. So now I'm going to just show you can group the table by color instead, and I kind of like doing that because then I can only focus on the stocks that I want. So right now I'm just interested in the yellow stocks that I'm going to replace, and I'm going to show you how to find a good replacement stock. So for this example, we're going to use FORM, and quickly I just want to get rid of the portfolio and just see how it's doing in its sector and industry. And you can see that it's in the industry of semiconductors, which is outperforming technology. So it seems like it's a good industry to be in, but it's kind of all over and has way more volatility. And actually, if you mouse over it, you can see kind of in the middle of that tooltip, it's saying, oh, sorry, that's the PKI. It's about 1.74 for beta. So it's pretty volatile stock. So it seems that I could likely get something that's still has solid returns, but isn't quite so volatile. And if you also look at the market cap, it's got a tiny little market cap, so I can probably look for something that's a bit bigger. So for that, I'm going to go to the Peers tab, which is one of my favorite parts of Stock Rover. If you're not familiar with it, it's basically like a second table next to the main table that shows only stocks in the industry of the selected stock. So we have form selected here, and you can see these are all the stocks in the same industry. So now what I'm going to do is take what I don't like about this stock and just filter it out. So first, I'm just going to go and look for bigger stocks. So I have this market cap, which I've added in using the Add Column button. You can add in any any columns that you want. But I'm going to right-click, go to Filter, and I'm only going to look. Oh, this was already in from practice, but 1 billion market cap. So that knocks out some of the little guys there. And next, I'm going to go to the EPS 1-year change. So just kind of have some baseline. I have it again as 5 here, and that just kind of ensures that it's growing its earnings. And I only want to look at stocks that are growing their earnings. I also want to make sure that the average volume is high enough to have some liquidity. You can see that there's some really, really thinly traded stocks here, and I don't want to consider those, so I'm going to filter it. And again, it's just above 100,000. And that gives me just stocks that have more trading volume. And then lastly, I wanted a stock that's less volatile. This one had a beta of 1.74, so I'm going to just add in beta less than 1.25 here. And when I do that, you can see it pairs it down to this nice, tidy little list of stocks that I can look at. And I've also sorted them by the 1-year return versus industry here, so I can see the top stocks in their industry that meet all these criteria. So from here, I'm just going to add these to the table as research tickers and then save them as a watch list. So what I mean by that is I'm going to click these little green plus icons, and that's going to add it into this research box here and then add them to the table. So I'm just going to add in all of the ones that have a positive return against the industry over 1 year, because the industry has been doing well. And once I've done that, you can see that they're over here in the context of the portfolio, but I'm just going to click this little curved arrow, and that shows just the research tickers here. And I'm also going to add in the one that I'm comparing it to, just so I can see, how they compare across. And then you can see they're all research tickers here, but I'm going to save them as a watch list so I can easily return to them. Go to save table as watch list, and then I'm going to call it form replacement candidates. Click Save. Now that's been added under my watch lists, and then I can safely remove them as research tickers, but they still show up because they're now part of the watch list here. And so from here you can basically research these however you like to. I can go, for example, to the growth tab and just kind of see what the estimate trends are to see if their earnings are increasing or decreasing and forecasted to increase or decrease here. So you can see that this stock ASX has a positive next year estimate trend, so that's a good sign, whereas this one has negative just by a little bit, but even so, something to keep in mind. So next I'm going to show you the correlation tab. So this is available to premium subscribers only. It's available in portfolio reporting up here in the top left. But essentially the idea with correlation is once I've found a stock or a set of stocks that I might want to replace with my portfolio, I'll want to find ones that are a little bit not as correlated with my portfolio. So they are kind of just adding some, so they're not going to go down when my portfolio goes down. So just to give a brief outline of how the correlation tab works, all the stocks in the selected portfolio or watch list are listed as both rows and columns, and this grid is symmetrical across the diagonal. So right now I have the dividend portfolio selected and the form replacement candidates. So actually if I just look at the portfolio to start, you can see this shows all of the stocks in the dividend portfolio and how they correlate with each other, and then also with the portfolio as a whole, because that has its own row and column. And so the intersection cell shows the correlation between the two stocks, and if you just mouse over, it'll tell you what it is. There's also a overlaid heat map, which you can undo if you want, but we like to keep it checked because it kind of gives a visual. But positive correlation above 0.5 are in shades of red, with kind of lighter red being a lower correlation and darker red being a higher correlation. And then the negative correlation is in shades of purple, and then gray is kind of the sweet spot of 0 to 0.5 correlation, which is really what you want to aim for. So what I'm going to do with this is look at the replacement candidates to see how they correlate with my current portfolio, because again, I want ones that are less correlated. So I'm going to check the replacement candidates watch list, but then that adds them on top of all the stocks, and obviously I can't see really which is which, so I'm going to undo dividend portfolio. So now these are only the replacement candidates, which you can kind of see in the background here. And then to see how they correlate with the portfolio, I'm just going to add it in as a kind of a research ticker here. So I can type it in, search for the diversified stocks portfolio, and add it, and now the diversified stocks portfolio has its own row and column, so I can see how each of these stocks correlates with the portfolio as a whole. And the easiest way is just to go along, just choose the diversified stocks and then look and see how they're all correlated. So ASX has 0.80, so that's all right, a little high. 0.95 is a really high correlation. I probably wouldn't want to add that to my portfolio. So even from here, actually I can operate kind of behind the portfolio window and just remove this highly correlated stocks from consideration just by right-clicking it and selecting Remove from Current Watch List. And then to reload the portfolio reporting, you just can select and unselect and then select again, and now that stock is no longer there, so I didn't even have to think about it, which is really nice. I don't have to kind of keep track of the ones that I didn't want. I can also just filter it if I want. We have a filter here and say I only want to see stocks with correlation less than 0.75. I can add that in, and then it quickly just gets rid of all the other ones, and I can see kind of what the lowest correlated ones are. So it's a really, really useful feature that I think is great if you're trying to look at the diversity of, or diversification of your portfolio. Now, since I'm in portfolio reporting, I'm just going to quickly go through it. Again, this is for premium users only, but it's another great facility to test the stocks in your portfolio. So I'm looking at 1 year here. I can go to the diversified stocks portfolio here and just kind of see the average value, cash value, the gain, inflows, etc. This is in value over time. And the risk and reward, I can just get some risk metrics to see kind of am I getting returns from risk or from smart stock picking. Holdings shows all of the stocks, and it also carries over the color coding from the table, which I think is really nice because I can kind of double check, say a stock that I thought I felt good about, I can see how it's actually doing and what it's contributed. So it's kind of nice that I can kind of double check against what I was looking at in the table. And then there's the correlation tab at the end. So now I'm going to quickly demo the alerts facility. So again, this is currently available to all users through the end of the month. And it's just another way to keep tabs on your portfolio. So say you don't have enough time to actually go into Stock Rover and look at all of your stocks, you can at least know that you can be alerted if anything really crazy is happening with them. So I'm going to go up to Alerts in the top right, and it automatically brings up this Create Alert window. And you can set just individual ticker alerts, but I'm going to go for the Portfolio or Watch List alert and select my diversified stocks. And it's important to note that this will set an individual alert on each stock in the portfolio. It won't monitor the portfolio as a whole, just so you know. From here, I can just take a look and see what I want to be informed of. So I can get an alert when the price increases a certain amount from the last close price for each of the 9 stocks. If the price decreases, so say I want to see if any of the stocks fell, 10% since the last close price, I can put that in. It'll automatically register as an email alert, so it'll email me when this happens, but you can also get text alerts if you want. The current price, you can get an alert if the current price crosses the simple moving average with a variety of time periods. Also, if the current price reaches a new 52-week high, low, or high. You can see if the current price is within a certain percentage of the 52-week high, low, or high. You can see if the price increases a certain percentage over the industry, the sector, or the S&P 500 over one day, 1 week, or 2 weeks. So, for example, I can see if the price increases over, more than 10% of the industry over 2 weeks, I can set that. Same with decreasing. And then the last one is also a volume alert. So you can see if the current volume exceeds the 5-day, 10-day, 1 month, or 3-month average by a certain amount. So maybe if I want to, if it's exceeding the 1 month average by 30%, I might want to know that. And then I can just click Save. And then it'll just show up into my active alerts, and here I can just go into my alerts anytime and see when they were last triggered, if they were. I can suspend them just by checking the box. I can edit them, go to vacation mode, all this. So this is the alerts facility, and it's really cool. Again, if you just want to make sure that your stocks are doing okay but don't have the time to go in and even look at them, the alerts is really useful. The very last thing I'm going to look at is portfolio modeling. So for that, I'm going to exit out, and this is also going to go premium at the end of the month. So if you haven't played around with it, you should, because you could still get some utility out of it before it goes premium if you're a basic user. So to access portfolio modeling, you go and right-click in the navigation panel and select Model from the drop-down menu. And then this will show all the stocks in the portfolio in this screen, and I'm kind of going to go over what all of these mean. Right now this is grouped by sector, but you can also just look at them ungrouped if you want by right-clicking a column header, selecting None. This is just like in the table, but I like to keep it grouped just so I can see them separated there by sector. And so here I can just test out some trades. So the example I was using before was maybe getting rid of FORM as because it was a little too volatile. So if I just go to its model quantity, and my current quantity is 200, but say I want to see what would happen if I just sold all of it, I can just type in 0. And you can see a couple things happen there. My cash balance increased because it was a sale. The row itself turned red, and that's because it's a reduction in the amount of shares. I could also uncheck this highlight changes if I don't want to see them color-coded, but I like to keep it color-coded. And then over in the right, I can see the actual portfolio versus the model portfolio performance. So if I had made this trade 6 months ago, how would my portfolio have done? And so if you remember, Form had done pretty well, so it looks like the actual historical performance would have been worse had I sold this. But I was thinking of replacing it, so I can click Add Ticker and type in one of the replacements. And I can just move this to the side. And you can see in the back here there's ASX, so I can just kind of see what my portfolio would be like if I added an ASX. And for this, I can see its current price and say I want to add in about 250 shares or so, which is about the same amount of money that was from the sale of FORM. And then I can see that turns green because it's I'm adding shares or adding a ticker. And then when I go over again to the actual portfolio versus the model portfolio, I can see that I actually would have done better in the past 6 months. Had I made it 6 months ago, the max drawdown would have decreased a bit, so that's that volatility coming down. The return versus the S&P 500 would have been a bit more. The risk-adjusted return would have increased as well. So that's kind of, again, that volatility. The correlation with the S&P is about the same. Beta goes down, so that's expected, right? Because this was one of the lower beta stocks that I was looking at. The volatility also goes down, same reason. And then the Sharpe ratio has gone up. Then below that, I can just kind of see the overall kind of how it affects the valuation. So this is has a lower PE. The earnings growth for this year, if I make this trade, will be projected to be a little bit lower, but then next year it's a little bit higher, 51.8 versus 54. The price to book goes up just a tad at 2.1%. Price to sales is about the same. I'd get a little bit more in dividends, and my dividend yield would go up. And then lastly, at the bottom, you can see the different sector allocations. So because this was just a swapping out one stock for another, it hasn't really affected my sector allocation at all. But if you're doing a much bigger retooling of the portfolio, then you'd want to take a look here just to make sure that your sector balance is where you want it to be. So that's all I have for the demo here. So now we're going to go through some of the questions. So if you have any questions at all about what I've gone over, type them into the question box, and we're going to go through them right now. So let's just make this a bit wider. Okay, so Howard, do you want to come on and do the questions?
Sure. Happy to do that. Thanks, Eric. I really enjoyed that, as always. Yeah, so there's some questions, and if you, as Erica mentioned, if you have questions, now would be a great time to type them in. But let's maybe you could read them, and I'll try to answer them.
Sure. So the first is a non-Stock Rover, but rather a weather-related question. Is all of our snow gone? Because, you know, we're based in Boston, so.
The answer to that is definitely not. They're actually projecting the snow won't be gone from here until late April, so it's really been an unbelievable winter here. So I'm looking at plenty of snow right now.
All right. The next question, is the PE a forward-looking PE or a backward-looking PE? And this is when you mouse over the portfolio name on the portfolio's view. So I can just go back to that.
Sure. It's the trailing 12 months, so it's backward-looking. All the PEs, whether they're at the portfolio level
right.
or individual ticker level on that ticker tip, the tool ticker tip, are the trailing 12 months PE.
Okay. How quickly are the prices updated?
They're near real time. It depends on the activity, how frequently traded a stock is. For example, if we put in Microsoft, you can tell also by the tooltip, so maybe we should do that. If we put in Microsoft into the research ticker box, for example, and if we mouse over it, you'll see the last trade time is 12:40 p.m. and according to my watch, it's 12:40 p.m. So that's pretty close to near pretty much real time. When you start getting into tickers that trade much less frequently, you can see a delay of a couple of minutes, or in worst case, even up to 10 minutes. But that trade time will always tell you how current things are.
All right. Tell me again how to see the news for an entire portfolio, please. So that I'll just
Sure.
demo that. So that's when you have the whole portfolio loaded into the table. So you do that by clicking the higher level My Portfolio. So right now I have the whole portfolio selected, but if you go up a level and just click My Portfolios, that'll list all of the portfolios as different rows, and then you can just select whichever one you want. Go to the news in the Insight panel, and then just make sure that you have one of these top 3 ones selected, and that aggregates all of them over the portfolio. Can you explain how correlation is calculated?
Well, correlation basically looks at, for each given day or time period, how closely the prices change. Like if one goes up 1% and the other goes up 1%, the two stocks you're looking at, for example, they would be perfectly correlated on that day. So basically it's kind of how well the price changes correlate. So you do a graph of an XY graph of the price changes over time of each of the two securities, and there's a mathematical formula, I think it's called least squares, that comes up with a number that varies anywhere from -1 to 1, which indicates the correlation. So I think you can just Google correlation calculation, and you'll see the actual math that does it. That's all we do is really do the math in that period of time to come up with the number.
Yeah, and we use the daily price vectors as well for that, and it's over whatever time period is selected at the top of the portfolio reporting.
Exactly. So what will happen is correlation between two securities will change as you change different time periods. No question.
All right. One user just typed in saying their alerts isn't working correctly, so we will get in touch with you off the air. But I'm just going to let you know that we see that. One person asking if this is recorded. It is. I will send the recording out to everyone that had registered, so you can watch it again and pause it or go back over it. And then one for you, Howard. Can we import portfolios using transaction data?
Not today. Today we only import position data on a given date, and from that we infer kind of the changes in position. There are some weaknesses with that, such as if you have day trades or if you import infrequently, and we won't see trades that are bought and sold within kind of if that happened within the portfolio import periods, you would miss that. So we're going to be switching to a transaction-based system in the very near future for premium users, so that they will be able to get a completely accurate trade history, and as well as what a nice thing that follows from that is completely accurate portfolio analytics as opposed to fairly accurate portfolio analytics, which is where we're at today. So that is coming.
Okay. Next question is, what feature enhancements can we expect? And, for example, will you one day add forward PE?
Forward PE, that might actually
I think it is in the product. Yeah, let's go down to the ticker level. Hang on, it's taking a second to load. But if you ever don't know if we have a... Now it's hanging. Hang on, I'm just going to refresh this. But you can always use the Add Column button in the table, and that will... you can just search like forward, for example, so I'll show you how to do that. Here we go. If I search forward, you can see that, yeah, we have forward PE as one of our metrics here. So you can always use this add column and just search for a keyword, and it'll look for both the column name and the description there. But as far as, I don't know if you want to go into the other feature enhancements that users can expect.
Well, sure. Well, it's actually quite a long list of things we're going to be doing to the product. It's under extremely active development. Some of the things you'll be seeing soon, one is we're reworking the UI to make it simpler. And as Erica mentioned, she's going to be doing 2 webinars on that later in the month. I'd really encourage you to check it out, because I think the product, the UI, will be even more powerful, but I think it'll be cleaner and simpler to use. We're going to be adding the transaction-based portfolios, as I mentioned. That's coming in the very near future. Things beyond that, I think we're going to be working on screening. We're going to be adding the ability to screen on ETFs, for example, and probably, we're also going to be adding a little later in the year the ability to actually score stocks across a lot of different metrics, such areas such as capital efficiency and growth, valuation, kind of technical stock performance, so that you'll be able to basically rank stocks against each other. And it's not really a recommendation system in that we're not going to tell you what to buy or sell, but if there's certain things that you care about, such as growth or valuation, we'll definitely show you which stocks are stronger than others in a very simple, I think, powerful way. So that'll be coming to the product later in the year. So those are some of the things that are coming. And there'll be there's also a whole host of kind of more minor capabilities that we'll continually be adding to the product. The best thing to do is stay tuned, because as we as we create new capabilities, we're always kind of we'll blog about it or let you know through the webinars some of the stuff we're working on.
All right. The next question is just a compliment, but we'll read it anyway. I'm a recent subscriber. FYI, you have an amazing and terrific product from what I've seen so far. So thank you. Always nice to hear. The next question, do you plan to add international indices / components / stocks?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We get that often. International comprises a lot of many different markets. You have the European markets, Asian markets, Australian markets, and typically those requests break down into a specific market that somebody wants, such as the UK or France or Asia. But I think that the short answer is maybe in the long term for Stock Rover, but it's really dependent on demand. The cost of the feeds for the international data is quite high, and there has to be enough of a market for us to want to offer that. So we're going to just see what the demands are for it. But I would say you will not see anything this year. Next year we're going to start to evaluate some of the more popular international areas and make a decision as to whether we'll start to offer them or not.
All right. Another question about portfolio modeling. When I'm thinking about taking something out of the portfolio, I do it on forward projections, not on history. Any chance you might take your modeling in that direction?
Well, that's an interesting question, like using forward PE perhaps to see how the portfolio. That's a good point. I mean, it's something we'll think about as we look to enhance the capability of the facility. We'll definitely take that on board. That's a very good suggestion.
All right. Can you add some detail to transaction tracking? For example, will you enable uploads from data files? Will you aggregate transactions and open trades?
Sure. We will definitely update transactions from data files. So the way it would work for any supported brokerage house, and we hope to support all the major ones, you would simply, rather than, generally they all have the ability to export either your positions or your activity. What you would do is export your activity for any date range you want. And you would just import that file, and that would catch up. Now, we're going to make it so that you don't have to be, super careful about the dates. You don't want to miss dates. In other words, if you've imported January's activity, you don't want to skip February and import March, because then that would give incorrect data. But if you import January and then you're in March and you say, I don't remember what my last import is, and you just say, I'll just import from the beginning of the year, we would notice the duplicate transactions in January and let you know about them, and by default not include them in the stream unless you asked us to, which you could override. So that's kind of how it'll work. Regarding aggregating transactions and open trades, we're simply going to take the data. The transaction stream is in the log we're going to keep is going to exactly match what comes out of the brokerage house. So whatever is in your activity log or your history log, history from your brokerage house would be also what you would see in Stock Rover. So however they do it as far as aggregating or not aggregating is the way we do it. For example, if you do a limit trade, sometimes it can take 6 or 7 smaller trades to actually execute, and some brokerage houses aggregate that into one trade with an average price. Some brokerage houses show you all the individual trades. We would just mirror whatever they do.
All right. Next question is, what is the classification system used for sector and industry breakdown?
Well, the industry and sector breakdown actually is defined by Morningstar, because they're our data feed. So whatever they do, we do. So I guess the best way to figure it out would be to figure out what classification system they use. So we're just using the system that Morningstar is using.
All right, and the last question so far is, does the software process short positions in one's portfolio?
Yeah, it's sort of, today you can do it. You can just put in a negative quantity for any stock position, and it should pretty much work. Similarly, we should work with margin, because if you put in a negative cash position, that should work as well. In the future, when we switch to the transaction-based system, we're definitely going to support short positions.
All right, and one more question came in just about transactions. How about taking transactions from Quicken? I don't know if we've...
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that the formats we're going to support are going to be the popular formats, and certainly Quicken is one of them. Of course, on the other hand, we need to have a sample file. So we have the ability to get sample files for pretty much all the major transaction brokerage houses. But for something like Quicken, we would either try to get it, and if we didn't get it, you could send us a sample file. You can change the data so there's no real data in it, but just to show us the format. And if you sent us that, we would certainly add it to the supported list.
Okay. Oh, one more came in. I use tags to set an international sector. I also use tags to put my ETFs in the sectors I want. This is a workaround I use for not having those sectors. Is there any downside to this approach?
Well, I guess one downside is you can only use one tag per
Right, yeah,
So
you can only use one keyword per tag, so but if it's, I mean, I guess if it's working for you, then you're probably
then it
better.
works.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing that will be happening in the product that would help a little in the ETFs, we are looking to try to get the sector allocations on the ETF so that when you have an ETF, we can actually allocate the percentage of the sector that each ETF is in, so you don't have to do anything special with sectors. So if you bought, for example, a diversified ETF and it had, 10% in energy and 10% in discretionary, et cetera, that when we did the sector allocations, we would allocate the sections of the ETF to each of those sectors, so you wouldn't have to, you would get, so if you have a combination portfolio with both stocks and ETFs, your sector allocations would be correct. Right now, it isn't the case. The ETFs go in their own category, so that should be coming.
Okay, and that's all the questions that we have today. So if you do think of anything, you can always email me. I'll be emailing you all with the recording, so just feel free to respond. But thank you so much for taking the time to learn about Stock Rover, and I hope you found the webinar helpful, and I hope everyone has a great day.